It's a positive film. It has heroes and villains, and that it essentially is a fun movie to watch. It's been a long time since people have been able to go to the movies and see a sort of straightforward, wholesome, fun adventure.
Well, it's a fantasy. It's not science fiction so much as it is space fantasy. And it's about people. It's finally about people and not finally about science.
The story, when you actually put it into words, is only so much nonsense to hang a great visual experience onto. It's the stuff that fairy tales are made of.
It's sort of boiling down religion into a very basic concept. The fact that there is some deity or some power or some force that sort of controls our destiny works for good and also works for evil.
Marvellous, healthy innocence. Great pace, wonderful to look at, full of guts, nothing unpleasant. I mean, people go bang bang and people fall over and are dead, but, no horrors. A sort of wonderful freshness about it, kind of like a wonderful fresh air.
It's got whatever you want it to be. It's pure entertainment. It's like a roller coaster ride, and it can be interpreted as long as you enjoy it, which is the intention.
Hello, welcome back to Generation Skywalker. You are listening to episode 4 of Those Old Fossils. Of course, I have the oldest of the old with me. As always, I've got Craig Spiver with me. Good evening, Craig.
Good evening.
Are you keeping well?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm all good, mate. All good. We have Mr. Mark Daniels. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, everybody.
Are you going to foo-foo it tonight, Mark?
I'm going to foof it hard.
We have Jez, which should be his last one while he's away, which is nice. Good evening, Jez.
Good evening, Stu. Hello, lad.
It'll be quite interesting, Jez, because everyone just thinks you're grumpy because you're miles and miles away, but next month they'll realise you're just a miserable git, won't they?
True, very true, yeah. But you guys actually bring me pleasure. I look forward to these sessions, I really do.
And this month we have a guest with us, a guest host joining the boys. We have Steve Savory. Good evening, Steve.
Good evening, everybody.
Now, how are you, Steve?
Good evening, Steve. Oh, sorry.
You all right, Jez? You crack on, mate.
I just want to say hello.
Hello.
Steve said hello, everyone. Hello. It's not Stu's show. It's the old fossils. It's not just one fossil.
Now, Steve, you used to be a hand focus collector and whatnot, and most people will be aware that you had a big sale off for personal reasons. Do you have much of a collection anymore? Are you still involved?
I'd say I'm involved as in I still have the passion, and I still have a collection of sorts. I've got a complete loose run sitting in a cabinet. I've got a Billy bookcase which is shelved out and full of cast and crew type pieces. And I've still got a reasonable collection of artwork around the walls of my office, but I'm not actively collecting at the moment.
So yeah, so you kept bits that probably meant the most to you then, and
yeah, absolutely.
You're ready to dip in whenever you're in a position to. So very nice. Now, before we get too much into the show this month, you'll probably remember from last month we spoke about dioramas, and we all decided to come up with a diorama idea based on ESB, because it is, of course, the 40th anniversary, and whatever the winner of the poll was going to build the diorama at some point over 2020. Now, of course, just having a quick rundown if I can remember it. Mark, you went with an Echo Base kind of like wormery type setup. Craig, you were... Oh, don't tell me. Something to do with Bespin. It was the Ugnaughts junk room, wasn't it?
Correct. It was.
Simon had come up with Dagobah with real life baby newts. I'd come up with something to do with the the asteroids, and of course Jez came up with Endor. ESB in true Jez style. Now, Craig, you ran the poll. Can you tell us who is making a diorama this year?
Well, it's also fair to say that you did rather spring that on us live as we were recording, that we would actually end up making them. So, but I was up for the challenge. But we ran the poll across Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. And the results of the Great British Diorama Make-Off are as follows. In joint third place, we have Jez's Endor and Stuart's Asteroid.
Great tactic.
In second place was my Junk Room. So we have a tie for the winners with Mark and Simon. So what do we do with that? I don't know.
Well, I think it's dead easy because Simon isn't here. I think he should forfeit and get to make the diorama. I don't want it. To me, that's the fairest. That's the fairest way of doing it.
I think the fairest way of doing it is if myself, Jez and Craig, we can come up with, we all get a vote on which one to vote for. Now, I'm going to put I'm going to stick my flag right on the mast straight away to Mark.
Oh, you absolute shit.
One, because he's here. Two, I think there's more chance of him doing it because Simon never gets around to anything.
That's true.
So, and I would really like to see the Wormery Echo Base. So I'm going Mark. So if you get one more vote, Mark, it's you. If the other two go for Si, it'll be Si.
Right, yeah, okay. Yeah, actually, can I ask? Right, so brilliant. I was thinking actually we could put this to Steve. So Steve is the honorary guest, actually. But if you ask me, it's going to be Simon, hands down. Simon all the way for this. So that's 1-1.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah, Mark, are you private messaging?
No, I just said to him. I just messaged him. Does he want any more medals?
yeah. So that's another one. But it's got to be Simon. It's got to be Simon. I mean, he's not here to defend himself, is he? Can
I tell you what he'll do? He will go in his garden. He will get a rock. He will put some stinky water around it and find a creature to put in it. So that is as good as it's going to get.
Your garage then?
My garage is half clear, mate, with dead mice. Craig?
Well, I think because there's some wriggle room in this, because we have, the parameters are very loose in terms of what a diorama might entail. As long as there's some figures in there, I think I'm going to vote for Mark because he's got the skills.
Oh, you son of a bitch!
But I've got some ideas of how you could do it in a very Mark way.
Oh man, Craig, I hate you, mate.
Oh.
No, it's not on. Steve, if you vote for me, mate, that's it.
Steve, what would you rather have seen?
Well, I believe I actually replied to the poll, or at least I did some interaction on Instagram with regard to this, and Mark did get my vote. I wanted to see the Hoth diorama built.
This is a pretty fix, this is.
So there we have it then, Mark. So you're going to build Echo Base in a kind of ant farm, wormery type of display. If you can do a time-lapse video as you go, and perhaps we'll release the video on, say, Christmas Eve. Something like that.
Yeah. Christmas Eve 2023.
A little treat there, and I know Mark won't let us down. Definitely got the most time on his hands out of everyone I know.
Thanks, boys.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, I know. God damn it.
Something. Not much, but it could be a life form. Commander Skywalker, do you copy? This is Rogue 2. This is Rogue 2. Captain Solo, do you copy? Commander Skywalker, do you copy? This is Rogue 2. Nice of you guys to drop by. Echo Base, this is Rogue 2. I found them. Repeat, I found them.
Shall we move on to topic 1, which good friend of ours, I'm sure we all know Ed Grant, who is the founder of Star Wars Forum. Personally, I'm sure we've all met him several times and chatted to him. Lovely chap. Now, he posted up an interesting thread on the forum. So I'm just going to read his exact post, okay? So bear with me. I have seen a few examples recently of competition for items driving up prices. There are a few good examples in the last Vectus auction, people paying way over what most people would consider reasonable prices to get their hands on an item they needed. This got me thinking about collecting etiquette for my own collection. I'm currently focusing on 4 main runs. 2 of them I was very late to the party on, I know that, so I have no problem seeing other more deserving collectors getting their hands on things before me. In fact, I'm pleased to see them make progress on their runs. On the other hand, for the other 2 runs I'm doing, I'm almost certain that I was the first person to try and do them, and I know for a fact that I did the majority of the research. The only public information you will find on the internet about them was by me. So for these, I admit I do feel slightly miffed that other people have jumped on the bandwagon and have managed to pick up pieces that I haven't managed to find yet. Does this make me a bit jealous and even greedy? Yes, probably. However, I put all the effort in doing the research and made it public rather than keeping it to myself. And as above, I love seeing collectors complete runs they have put a lot of effort into, and this goes for others as well. So are there any rules when it comes to competing on scarce items that more than one person wants? Do you just throw money at it so you get the item at all costs? Should you take a responsibility to help the person who did all the research you have benefited from complete their set first? Or is all fair in love and Star Wars? This created a thread of 5-6 pages over on Star Wars Forum. So first of all, Jez, I want to come to you on this. So just because someone does the research on a topic, does that give them the entitlement to have first refusal when said item comes onto the market? And outside of like close friendships, would you do it?
Oh, this is a tricky one for the first subject because it's going to definitely split opinions and maybe upset a few people. When we talk about research, we're not talking about cancer research or anything massively important, which is really, really fundamentally going to be life changing. There's some research that people are doing which other people are never going to read. Whenever I think of, I don't know what specific carded figure Ed was talking about. My assumption is to do with Tri-Logo bubbles, because when I see or hear of that, I do think of Ed because I know him. But there's going to be an awful lot of people who've never heard of him, who have never heard of research. There are thousands of collectors. And yes, we talk about small groups of gentlemen's agreements and stuff like that. But this research is very, very niche. I wouldn't necessarily worry about a bubble or text, etc. if I just want the figure on that card back. So, yeah, I am not in agreement with what's being said. I mean, he's saying about competition driving up prices. No, it's demand. Demand for something is what's driving up prices. And I kind of take a little bit of an issue with to someone more deserving of that piece. Who's to say who is deserving of a certain item or not? People could be doing all sorts of stuff to make them deserving or worthy candidates. But for me, the whole research thing is something which you're doing yourself. You enjoy the journey. You enjoy the value it brings. To make it public is brilliant. But I think we need to not be... I think we're kidding ourselves if people think that certain elements of research for vintage Star Wars collecting are very well known. I don't believe in this case they are.
To be fair, Jez, I kind of agree with what you're saying. Yes, like I said, I think close friendships. If you were collecting something and I quite fancied it, but I knew you needed to complete your run, I would let you go ahead. But if some bloke I'd never really spoke to online, maybe done a bit of research, I've got no connection with him and no. As far as I'm concerned, absolutely. No loyalty. So, and like you say, there's thousands of collectors, and who we really know well is quite minuscule, isn't it? The amount of people you would actually do that favour for. So,
absolutely, we're in our own little swim lanes here with regards to Sigma or Beyond the Toys stuff, Han Solo Focus. We have our own little swim lanes, but people don't necessarily know about that. People don't know about our niche little bits of collecting. Now, I've pointed Ed in the direction, I've sold Ed one thing and pointed him in the direction of a Luke X-Wing Canadian, because you do recognise that and you do understand it within your circles. But we can't control the mass market of Star Wars collecting. So you have your good days and your bad days. For this, I wouldn't worry about it, and there will be another time.
Mark, coming over to you, kind of very similar kind of questions. Surely if you spend the time doing all the research, as soon as you make that public information on a forum, on a social media, you're inviting other collectors to get involved in purchasing the same items you want. Do you think collectors have an obligation to the people that do the research?
Absolutely none whatsoever. If you decide to publish that research, and like Jez has mentioned, we're not talking cancer cures here. We're not talking things that are copywritten or protected legally. This is the collector community working together. And if you decide you're going to do some research and publish that research on a forum, you are helping the community understand a specific area that other people are collecting or whatever. You don't have ownership of it. It's just it's there for everybody to see. All you've done is brought it to light. So you don't have ownership of it, and therefore you don't have the hierarchy in terms of being able to get hold of an item that you should be getting to complete a run. To me, it's a personal thing, isn't it? I mean, the way I look at it, if I am looking for a piece and I'm able to obtain it, then great. But if I don't have to have a piece to complete a run or whatever, and I know somebody else that does need it, then I've lost count how many times I've tagged people, and I get messages pretty much every other day, somebody after a certain thing. And I have to try and remember all these people are after certain pieces. And I do my best in trying to tag somebody. Like Lee Simon Jacobs was after a pink layer shampoo bowl. You know the one I'm talking, the one that looks like a skill. And one popped up on eBay. And the first thing I did, and as soon as I saw it, was tagging, because I know he'd been after one for a long time. I didn't need it. If I had needed it, then, the circumstances would have been different. But I do not believe at all that anybody has, dibs on any particular item just because they've done research on it. No, I don't.
Craig, now, you've been around collecting a fair time, a good couple of decades at least. It's actually longer, isn't it?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen any unwritten rules of code of conduct ever been mentioned, even when, like, Rebel Scum was the place to collect, or anything when it comes to competing for scarce items?
No one ever, not that anyone copied me in on anyway. As we've discussed, there are gentlemen's agreements that take place, I think, with smaller subsections of the community. But no, there's no sort of etiquette as such that I've observed over the years. Although I think it's a really interesting topic, and I do understand where Ed is coming from as somebody who has researched things and put them out there. I remember before we went on to do the collecting track on the Helix presentation that we put together, Mark, myself, and Grant, that one of us, and I can't remember which one of us it was, joked that you do realise we're never going to win an auction again on eBay for any of this stuff, and that was pretty much true for a long while after. But we kind of knew that. We knew that presenting that work to 300 Star Wars collectors would pique some people's interest and create competition for ourselves, because we all collected that stuff. So I do understand, but no, we don't have any right over that.
Steve, what about competition driving up prices? Like Jez, surely that's just goes hand in hand with collecting.
Yeah, it's absolutely. It's what's available and what the demand is for it. I guess there's an element that if you put the information out there, and as Craig's just alluded to, that you share that with hundreds of people, those hundreds of people might get turned on to what it is that you've done the work on and what the information you're sharing, and they may think, hey, that's quite a good idea. And obviously, the more people that then want to do that, the less there will be available, and the more expensive that will become. I think we've all seen that, 2014, 15 onwards, right the way down to loose figures and Princess Leia's going to kind of £100 when they used to be £20 or £30 figures at most. It's a lot more people get excited about something, the price will go up.
I do have a positive story. I remember in the early 2000s that, I'd be bidding on the things I like, that everyone knows I like. And I was contacted by another kind of eBayer out of the blue saying, listen, you don't know me, I don't know you, but we're bidding on the same stuff all the time. I think we could probably join forces. And you've probably got things I want, I've probably got things you want, and that formed a little arrangement where we would sort of call dibs on things, and we'd promise each other that the next person could go after the subsequent items if they came up, and it became a friendship that lasted for years. And that was a really nice example of somebody out of the blue, before all the Facebook groups, getting in touch to collaborate rather than compete. That stuff does happen, which is cool. And I know that one of the little groups I sometimes hang out with are the action transfer guys, and they have a little group, because again they're all after sort of letter set items outside of Star Wars, completely, their whole range. But they have a little system where they step aside for the guy who runs the site to bid on it, so he can have it, so he can scan it, reconstruct it, do all the stuff he needs to do, and then he sells it on at a really good price to sort of people in the community. So there aren't those arrangements that I know of in the Star Wars worlds. There are similar things in other communities, I think.
Be very difficult to do in a Star Wars world. There's probably 1,000 Facebook groups, isn't there?
True enough, yeah.
Yeah, to get them all to work in harmony is you don't see them working in harmony on one group, do you? Let alone all of them. But yeah,
it's the cut and thrust of collecting, isn't it?
I think Ed's idea of people stepping aside and helping each other is a very romantic idea of even what life is like, but it's not like that, is it? It's a cutthroat world, and people aren't gonna really give a damn if you sat in front of a computer screen for 5 hours and put together a matrix or whatever.
It's down to the people who do the research to time how they release that and pick the medium they choose to kind of get that information out there. I think about the Liana Wanawa that we've talked about in the past. I'd probably be lying if I said that I didn't hold that back until I kind of got well into the run, because it was just kind of my little thing, and I enjoyed it being my little thing. And then when it got to the point where I had enough information and I'd done enough research, it was fun to kind of let that out there and let other people kind of get on board with it.
Do you know what? Talking about them, this is going to go off on a tangent here, but I remember when we discussed that on the first episode of this, and you said you were picking them up for around about 20 quid a copy. Over on that Deal or No Deal group, I've seen a few come up there, and they've been selling for about $100, $120 on there, paying over what they're really worth, or there has been a sharp rise in them. But I did notice that. I thought, they've risen a lot. Mm. So Ed, I think we all love you, but not necessarily completely behind you with your thoughts on that, and sadly that etiquette isn't there.
I have brought peace, freedom, justice, and security to my new empire.
Your new empire?
Don't make me kill you.
Anakin, my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy!
If you're not with me, then you're my enemy.
Only a Sith deals in absolutes.
Now, moving on to topic 2, and you never know. Craig, you're the one that suggested this to me, that we take a look at packing paperwork. You forwarded all of us a terrific article written by Yehuda over on the archive, which I think's 2, 3, 4 years old now as an article.
Well, I'll tell you what's inspired it. So I was afforded the opportunity to buy a job lot of paperwork, and there are over 100 separate items, and they range from Kenner packing catalogues to bounty hunter leaflets, instructions, a few sticker sheets. It's a real treasure trove, and not the sort of thing I would normally go out and seek. I've got boxed ships and things that could probably do with a catalogue, but there are far more interesting things to take my attention away from completing a box by adding a little catalogue. But this was a chance to sort of buy a whole load at a fairly decent price and just sift through that and put things together. Put some of the catalogues in the boxes, instructions where I didn't have instructions, and just prompt a little bit of a tidy up in that respect. And obviously to do that, I had to sort of take it to the internet and sort of find some of this information, and it is very disparate. A lot of it's kind of hidden in forums or Facebook groups. Bespin Prime has a really good sort of hashtag BP What's in the Box, and people photograph the contents of just unused toys with all the kind of inserts, the instructions, the stick sheet. So you get a good picture of what would have come there back in the day. But also it's a question of sifting through sales posts. Mark Hockley's got a great Instagram, Star Wares, if you haven't seen that, where he does something similar, lays it all out. And it's a really good visual guide of sort of, if you want this stuff absolutely complete, it's some good reference. And it was sort of researching that brought me to this blog that Yehuda had written, which was just fantastic. It's just a great chronological jaunt through the catalogues in particular. I wanted to sort of bring it to your attention, and I thought it was a good thing to talk about.
Yes, yeah, and it is a great article, so I'd urge everyone to go and first of all just go and search the Mini Cats Guide to Kenner over on the archive, because it's a fantastic article and I'm sure we'll link to it. So first of all, let's start with his article before we get too much into it. Now, on the article, Craig, he has given us a classification system under 4 categories. Can you just explain that system that he's gone with?
So he's given these items 4 categories. Category 1 is wide market release catalogues included in many different toys. Category 2, which are less common variants of category 1. Category 3, wide market release catalogues only available with 2 or 3 different toys. Rare variants of category 1 catalogues, more common foreign to US books. And category 4, wide market release only available in 1 toy, most foreign to US books, other rare oddities. So that's the stuff that's particularly useful for me, because I've got 1 item, it goes in 1 box. But yeah, it helps kind of sift through this stuff and work out what we're looking at.
Precisely. Now, Jez, I'm going to come over to you, because using that article and hopefully what you're best to do will help us explain the category system a little bit easier. Now, I don't expect you to go through all of them. There are many on there. But using the article, can you just give us an overview of the catalogues, especially any of particular interest that you liked?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, love this article. It came out on May the 4th, 2017. And I loved it right from the beginning. I was learning and I was scrolling down thinking, right, okay, making notes. I'd been making notes for a while, then realised I'd hardly scratched the surface. I'd scrolled down about 10% of this article, so full of photographs, more photos than anything else, as you could expect, but absolutely fantastic. Now, traditionally, as you'd expect, they would start off in order of release of the movies, and they started off with the American releases in chronological order, as Craig said. So started off, in fact, there were, from a USA edition, there were 8 different mini cats for Star Wars alone. 10 in Empire Strikes Back, 7 in Jedi, and then 3 the Power of the Force planetary maps. They then go on to others, to international, and some which we would have seen very, very often, particularly in the UK. The Palatoy Death Star catalogue is a particular interest to a lot of people. But the variety and the countries getting ticked off was fantastic. I mean, yes, you had the traditional Kenner Canadas, Germany, French Mechanos, the Dutch Clippers. But then they were going on, the Leddies, the Italians. But then there were also examples of Norwegian, Playmix, Swedish ones, Spanish, Denmark, Finland, Turkey, and of course the Poppy ones, which we would forget the Empire Strikes Back release of the little Poppy fold-out ones. Then there's additional ones such as the rebates, the sweepstakes, the Bounty Hunters capture log, Palatoy painting competitions. So it's not just the very traditional booklet that you would imagine. There are so many different types. Of particular interest to me, one which I particularly liked and I would love to see was the first release of the Star Wars one, which is a small early bird catalogue and 8 pages, but it's actually got pictures of the actors rather than the figures, because the figures weren't ready for photography yet. So it just shows how quick they were trying to get this stuff produced and out there. So that one was of particular note. And what was interesting as well is the way in which these things were binded. So you've got different variations which are glued, some are string backed, and then as you move through the range and you get to the silver covered Empire Strikes Back ones, which to me look very modern, they certainly look advanced, like late 90s opposed to early 80s. These ones come with staples, and then as you went past the Empire Strikes Back into Return of the Jedi, they still used all three different types. So it's not like one replaced the other or they favoured them. So lots of different versions. Category 1, as we've said, is the more readily available one. And actually, that's one of the ones which I preferred myself. It was the number 7, which they had. Very dynamic, Death Star, 4 X-Wings, a TIE fighter. In fact, it's actually Darth Vader's TIE fighter being chased by an X-Wing. And I really like that one. And being a Cat 1 means I should be able to get a hold of one of those quite easily. And the other favourite of mine would be the Palatar Death Star, which I don't think I've got any chance of getting hold of. But no, great. I loved it. Brilliant article. And definitely worth probably a 15-minute read, 20-minute read.
Steve, I'm going to come over to you because Craig stated that the pack-in paperwork didn't used to be considered that important. Do you consider a boxed item incomplete without the paperwork's inclusion, including things like the decal sheet?
I do. I think the instructions, the mini catalogue, if there's supposed to be a voucher or a flyer, I think that, for me that's the same as the inserts. And the box and the small parts of the toy itself. I think it's part of that experience of drawing the toy out of the box to look at it and having all the paraphernalia with it. It's a big part of the experience of owning that as a box item. I think I would, though, slightly contradict that comment when it comes to sticker sheets. I think sticker sheets are kind of, if they've been used, certainly they're a kind of disposable item, a bit like an opened plastic bag that would have had a small part for the toy in it. I wouldn't be precious about having a small empty plastic bag in the same way that I wouldn't be precious about having a used decal sheet, as long as those decals are applied to the toy. Yeah, I wouldn't throw it away if I had it and it was in the box, and I wouldn't particularly be motivated to sell it on or trade it as an individual empty decal sheet. But yeah, it's not something I would actively hunt down to feel I had to complete a toy.
So the paperwork would actually prevent you from making a purchase?
I don't know that it'd prevent me from making the purchase, but it would be something that I would then want to seek out in order to complete it, in the same way that if I bought a box Millennium Falcon and it didn't have the radar dish, I would want to go and seek out the radar dish to complete that toy. And I would think of the mini catalogues and the bits of paperwork instruction sheet particularly as part of that. Yeah,
fascinating. What about the rest of you on that?
I remember going around memorabilia and there'd be boxed ships piled high, and a lot of my collection comes from those days, and you'd kind of judge it on the box, quality of the box, whether the toy was complete or not. And instructions were a bonus, but I don't ever remember kind of umming and ahhing because it didn't have the card inserts or the catalogue or the sticker sheet at all. It was the box and the toy, and instructions were a bonus, but it wasn't an edge tipper. It didn't break the deal. But now I absolutely subscribe to what Steve was saying. You want the lot. It's sort of the collecting market has matured, and now we view that as kind of the ultimate in in having a complete toy.
Interesting. Mark, Jez, are you in the same boat as that? Do you see the instructions and the pamphlet as important as the training board and falcon?
It's not complete if it doesn't have an instruction sheet, or I'm not too precious about catalogues, but if it comes with a catalogue, and I've got one spare, I mean, they're relatively easy to get hold of. There's plenty of them out there, so you can, complete a box, no problem. But instructions, it's not complete unless it's got the paperwork with it, in my opinion, or the inserts.
Yeah. From my point of view, if I bought a Rebel Transport which didn't have the ramp, I'd get the ramp before the inserts or anything else. Same with Speeder Bike and flaps. Same with Slave One and the Hannon Carbonite block. To me, the complete ship is that. I don't care so much for the box. The box is great, but it's not the be all and end all for me. I'm more about the actual physical components. Not saying that instruction sheet isn't a physical component, but of the actual toy or playset is what's important for me.
I didn't think that they would be as important for everybody as the ship, but find that quite an interesting topic there, that the masses go with that. Now, Craig, let's get on to some specifics with the leaflets and the booklets and stuff. There's a couple of areas I wanted to look at, mainly Palatoy sections now. Now, you point out that there are 4 different variations of the Bounty Hunter leaflet. I knew there was a couple, but 4 is quite a lot if people are chasing them. Can you take us through them? And also, you also state that the Palatoy posters are folded differently, which I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's only that's recently come to light for myself. But the Palatoy Bounty Hunters leaflet was something that I must have seen scrolling through Facebook. I think it was Stefan Savory. I think he was selling one of these things, and in his sales post and on Jabba's Court, he included a link to the Imperial Gunnery where he'd kind of put this information out there in the forum, and I found that fascinating. You kind of think, oh well, there's a Bounty Hunter leaflet. It goes in the box with the Bounty Hunter logos on it, but he's done his research and he's got 4 different types listed. First one was released in 1980. And it was revised in 1981. And the revision, there was a postage charge, which was changed from £6 to £7 on the Darth Vader collector's case. And the layout was altered on the back. It was revised again in the same year. And the postage went up from £7 to £8. Dengar's postage went up from 30p to 14p, went down. Again, the layout was altered, different font. The available dates were removed. And again, the back layout changed again. And then in 1982 was the final release, which, again, on the inside, the layout was fiddled with, different font, and the back, the layout was changed again. So there are 4 different versions of the Bounty Hunter leaflet out there. As to which one goes in which box, who knows? I guess you just have to make a call on.
Quick question for you. Just going to jump in there for a minute. For someone who doesn't know what a Bounty Hunter leaflet is.
Yeah, I kind of realised that halfway through.
What was it for?
So the Bounty Hunter scheme was a loyalty scheme, collector stamp scheme that ran in the UK. Palitoy products, on the Palitoy Star Wars products. It was based on a very successful similar promotion that ran with Action Man. So on Action Man products, you could clip out little stars, put them in a little leaflet, send them off. And depending on how many you managed to save up and how much postage you included in in your letter off to Palitoy, you would receive one of 3 or 4 toys in varying degrees of value. So there'd be an easy one to get with a couple of stars, and then a harder one with more products. And the way that the Bounty Hunter promotion worked in the UK was that you would cut out the nameplates from your action figure card backs. So that's why so many are destroyed, and you see so many sort of awkwardly chopped out nameplates, as kids would clip these things, stick them to this leaflet, and send them off to Palitoy.
Craziness, eh?
I know.
And also the second part of what I asked you was you stated the Palitoy posters are folded differently. Now, you're one of the only people I think I know that would notice that.
Well, it wasn't me who noticed it, but it was a sales post on Deal or No Deal that somebody had put on saying, and it was for 2 different Empire Strikes Back posters. So the posters that would have the big AT-AT image on one side, and on the reverse was a montage of all the other products that were available at that time. And they'd been folded differently, presumably to put into different boxes. So, if you're me and you're trying to work out, what went in what box and what out of this big pile of paperwork I've got, that's another thing to consider, which just, it just tweaks my OCD to the maximum. Do you know what I mean? I mean, as if it wasn't difficult enough. The posters are folded different.
Yeah, so check all your ships. You might have the wrong folded style in your box. Yeah,
it's another matrix to work on, isn't it?
Yeah. Perhaps you could do that while Mark's building his Echo base. Now, Mark, the Palitoy Death Star's already had a couple of mentions here tonight already. The Palitoy Death Star leaflet holds a pretty premium. Whenever you see them come up, they go for big costs compared to all the other catalogues I see sold. So, first of all, what is the current cost and why is it so expensive?
It's a very, very expensive little catalogue, that is. Very tough to find in decent condition. It was originally only found in the Death Star playset, although I have it on good authority from several people now, several sources, that say that they remember seeing them on counters in toy shops back in the day. I don't remember ever seeing them or having one in a box or owning one as a child, and I have no reason to doubt these people. It seems completely plausible to me. I also have been told by 2 or 3 people now that it was in the X-Wing box, or in certain X-Wing boxes anyway, not every single one, not as a rule of thumb. So there might be some instances on that catalogue appearing in other boxes other than the Death Star, which would make sense, because if you're going to the expense of producing a catalogue, in the aim of selling more products, you want that catalogue to go in as many of your products as possible to generate more income. So, it makes sense. But the last one that came up on eBay, which was only a week or so ago, as of July 2nd, 2020, went for just over £200. So they are still going up in price. They were 75 to 100 for quite a while. There hasn't been one for sale for some time, so certainly not a decent one anyway. I think there was one that sold not long before that went for under 100, but that had got issues with it, some serious issues. So still a very, very expensive little catalogue.
Something else that obviously springs to mind on this was, I'm pretty sure there was a reprint run in the 90s of these.
Yes.
So can you give us the background of what happened in the 90s, and is there a way of telling between the two when you're buying?
It came with a very short-lived magazine called Area 51, and it was packed with a Power of the Force reproduction catalogue as well, with the one with the Imperial shuttle on the cover. Really nice photograph, actually. It's a very, very good reprint. The only way you can tell them apart, really, unless you get one in hand, but from the photograph, is always look on the back cover. It will have reproduction Area 51 by kind permission of partially printed by Jason Joyner, who is sort of Apex UK collector, and he was responsible for bringing those out. And they come up all the time between £5 and £10 generally. There's quite a few of them around, but they don't seem to have affected the value of the originals at all.
So, boys, let's just talk about the catalogues. How important, how much nostalgia do you get from picking up a catalogue?
Loads. They were the guidebook to what you were going to buy next. More so than the card backs, I think. And I've got some of my original ones, and they've got action figures crossed out, and ticked, and you shudder at the state of my Death Star catalogue, but it was my original one, and it's what I used as my checklist. So, I think they afford lots of nostalgia because you pored over them. You spent a lot of time with them, looking at them, looking at the detail. So I would say, they are, when I pick up one, certainly one of the earlier Palitoy ones, bags of feelings. Used to get Kenner ones in Palitoy boxes, so you would get to see stuff that you were never going to get a chance to find in Scunthorpe Town Centre. Wasn't going to happen. So they were also a portal to a magical, mystical world that you would never experience until you grew up.
Did you know back then that you'd own everything and it would dominate your house, Craig?
I've been looking through a lot of them recently, and you sort of I remember looking at that Force Beam and thinking that's a bit of a clunky old thing, and now I've got only 12 of them.
Jez, do you remember getting one with your Rebel Troop transport?
I was just going to say that. I can't remember getting one. For me, the nostalgia of going through and seeing what was available, seeing what was out, was more things like Argos catalogue, Littlewood catalogues, and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely the Argos. Now I really can't remember these, unfortunately. I wish I could. There is definitely the appeal. I do like these, but yeah, no real hit of nostalgia.
So we just said that they're like the one that goes with the Death Star is like £200. Mark, what do they generally go for? All the other ones? What are we looking? Are they all quite expensive, or is this kind of like a reasonable collecting area?
No, I think the Palitoy catalogue's probably one that stands out as being one of the most expensive out of all of them. There's very few bits of paperwork that spring to mind as being expensive. The one piece of paperwork that does ring a bell Palitoy wise is the little and it is tiny. It's maybe about 4 inches by 3 inches, and it's the little instruction sheet that came with the debut Empire Strikes Back X-Wing, Palitoy X-Wing, and it just shows you where to put the stickers. And this is the pre-battle damage sticker X-Wing, and it was unique to that particular box. And I had been looking one for many, many years, and one never came up. And when they did, they always went what I thought was silly money for a tiny bit of paper. But, this is Star Wars collecting. You should really be used to silly prices for silly things. So, I think the last one went for about £200. And it's not even colour, it's just black and white. There's nothing to it.
There are some funny little addendums and little bits that sort of seem like afterthoughts in some of this stuff. I mean, we've talked about the catalogues and the instruction sheets and the sticker sheets, but you know, I've got in my pile, which I can only assume is either from the inflatable lightsaber or the bot bags, there's a little tiny slip of paper, again single colour, that talks about moistening the valve before you seal it. And I know there's another piece kicking around that talks about how you should take off the large size action figure release of Luke Skywalker, how you take his boots off with a little bit of talcum powder. So there's all these kind of curious little bits of paperwork that I am sure, you know, if two people wanted that, they could bid them up quite high, because how has that stuff survived, you know, unless it's in a sealed box? Well, I think we'll all be offline catalogues now.
Because we've all done the research on this, then we're the only ones who can buy the catalogues. So no one else can buy the catalogues. Otherwise, it's unfair.
I think we've been absolutely above board in listing our sources.
Yeah, we'll let Yehuda go first. Craig, perhaps you could close this out. Was your area. Nice little conclusion.
I think it would be interesting to. I mean, that debate around sort of the completeness of something and the scale was really interesting. Not something we've talked about before. So it'd be interesting to know where people sit on that scale. You know, is it complete if it has a catalogue or not?
Well, I think we definitely need to put a poll out there to see about whether you think your ship's complete, because I was quite surprised that out of the 4 of you, 3 of you would consider your ship incomplete without it. I've never really thought about it in that regards, you know. If I've got a box ship, the inserts are always quite important to me in a complete ship. The inserts are complete, keep the box shape, and the ship was all it was always about for me. I always think the instructions in a catalogue are a nice plus point if they're in there. But yeah, perhaps got me thinking.
What about the posters? Because they turned the catalogues over into become more of a poster type effect, didn't they, a bit later on? So you ended up with like the big kind of AT-AT diorama poster. That was pretty cool with all the catalogue images on the back. People remember those? Did you guys all have those posters put up on your walls as they come out of your box ships?
I've still got a couple of ours from when we were younger, which are kind of unfolded. They've only probably been unfolded once. They're still quite nice and neat. So yeah, they do ring a bell more than
absolutely. That was a real Palatoy thing. Kenner continued with the tiny little, you know, postcard size catalogues right through.
Interesting topic, and maybe an area of collecting that doesn't. You're right. Stefan's very much into his paperwork and documenting all that, and he's done some great research. More questions, Craig. So that will give you something to do on social media.
Yeah, if somebody can point me at the ultimate database of, you know, what goes where and what type of folded poster goes in what type of box. I think one of the other things we've not talked about is grading. So I don't know the answer to this. Will the grading companies grade a piece if this stuff is included or not?
Well, there's a question.
Because you do see the mailers, particularly when they're all encased in acrylic and laid out, they always have the mailer with them.
Well, obviously, and GW Acrylic's poppy cases also have 2 slots for the two little pull-out bits of paperwork for that on their display. That's a good question. Has anyone had a ship graded or owned a graded ship here? Steve, you must have done.
No, I wasn't. Never been into grading.
I must admit, I've seen some. I think CAS have graded some loose ships with all the parts separate, and I'm pretty sure they've got the catalogues in. But that's a big piece of acrylic. Once if you're talking about grading something like an Imperial shuttle, by the time you've got all the parts to the side and you've got the catalogues, that's a hefty piece of acrylic. That's more of a table than a piece for a shelf, isn't
it? They graded a loose shuttle, no box, just the shuttle with all the, and it was unused, so all the parts were separated and the paperwork was there as well.
I've been waiting for you, Obi-Wan. We meet again at last. The circle is now complete. When I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master.
Only a master of evil, Darth.
Right, so moving on to topic 3. There's always some sort of scam going on in the Star Wars world, be it a Darren Orm box or ripping off Mark Daniels' work or someone else's work, or be it someone being scanned through something not being posted or toys not arriving and all this kind of stuff. But for Britain, there's been two big British scams in the last few years that kind of rocked the collector community in this country, and that was Toy Toni and Baggiegate, and both had a massive impact on collecting. It's a few years on from both of them, so I don't want to really go into what these scandals were, but more kind of the aftermath, how it's left those areas of collecting, what kind of situation they're now in. So what we will do is we will just get a brief couple of minutes overview of each scam, just so we refreshed our minds. Now, Jez, I asked you to look at the Toy Toni scandal, which Jason Joyner broke on Star Wars Forum UK back in 2013. Doesn't feel possible. That's 7 years ago.
That's right, yeah. So it was just before a Farthest From event, because I remember it was the big talk of the town. So, Jason had just dropped it into conversation in a massive thread on Star Wars Forum UK, which has got 204 pages alone on that single thread. So, good luck getting all the information out of that. I'm glad you gave me this one. And this dropped on December the 5th, and December the 5th, 2013. I think it was probably the busiest the forum has ever been. Someone had asked a question just about Toy Toni getting hold of figures, because he was a seller who had a shop in Brighton, so known as Toy Toni. Jason comes on and says, yes, that's correct. He bought around 25,000 figures, bubbles and cards. Jason was wanted in on the deal, but actually got beaten to it by Tony, and who apparently bought the whole lot for around about £10,000. Now, according to Jason, Tony had said that he was looking at the possibility of getting these all put together. So how they were originally meant to be, but yet 15 years or so, 20 years later than they were going to be. So original cards, bubbles and figures, but figures which had been circulated around. And he was calling those mint on cards, mint figures on cards, but not the mint on card as we know. So people have been buying these, the grading companies have been duped, everyone had been getting some pristine carded figures, and then it dropped, and it was all over the forum. Loads of people coming out of the woodwork saying, yeah, I'd heard about this. And then lots of people just being completely overwhelmed. The bottom fell out of the market. Jason Smith had collected a lot of these Palatoy cards and ended up selling all of his, disclosing them all as well, very honourably. Jason's got a very good website now, which gives a lot of information on Toy Toni. But essentially what he described as mint on card aren't originally sealed vintage carded figures.
And I'm sure everyone kind of knows. Actually, I say everyone kind of knows what Toy Toni is now. I'm often amazed at how many people will be on a Facebook thread and something will be stated, is this a Toni, or this is a Toni for sale, and someone goes, what's Toy Toni? It's still not everyone is educated on it. Yeah, it's whether they're new people coming into the hobby or returning. Yes, so thank you for that, Jez. That was the recap of that. And of course, Mark, in 2017, Frank called out Jeff Glanville on Star Wars Forum UK about producing and selling fake baggies, which became known as Baggiegate. Now, this one, more than Toy Toni, kind of divided the community, certainly to begin with people not so sure whether this scam was legit or whatnot. Can you rehearse this? And what was?
I think it's because the people involved were part of the community. Jeff Glanville was a seller at Farthest From, and had been a seller for quite some time, and he was a collector and seemed to obtain all manner of items, decent stuff, decent prices, and a lot of us had bought from him. A lot of us had spoken to him and socialised with him. Always came across as a really sort of genuine collector, nothing untoward. And then obviously Frank Hughes, who is the go-to guy with regards to anything in a bag. I think there was a lot of, before the story sort of hit on the forum, when it was outed on the forum, there was a lot of background before it sort of bubbled to the surface. And I think there was a lot of conversing, because Jeff managed to obtain a lot of bagged figures which Frank was buying from him, and over a period of time I think Frank began to smell a rat with regards to certain things coming up for sale when an item was requested or whatever, and then he started to examine the print quality on the bags. I think one of the purchases was a box as well, 2 or 3 pack box of Cantina figures, and he noticed discrepancies with fonts, print quality, colours, cardboard grade. All these little tiny things started to amass, and then Frank did a lot more homework and basically blew the story open on the forum, and basically accused Jeff of making and selling bagged figures in the same way that Toy Toni was using original parts to sell mock figures, basically duping the general public. And this story rumbled on, and a lot of people got involved. And I remember commenting at the time that having dealt with Jeff, he didn't come across as the sort of guy that would certainly knowingly, go out to deceive collectors. I mean, the guy was a collector himself. He didn't appear to be short of a few quid. There wasn't really a huge amount of money involved. We're not talking hundreds of thousands of pounds, and it just seemed a very strange thing to do. Now, he actually then divulged that he was buying a lot of stock from a third party, and a lot of people were questioning whether this third party did actually exist. And I think the location of this guy might have been in the US. Like I say, the story rumbled on. I'm not even sure whether there's been any resolution to this. I don't know whether we've actually sort of got to the bottom of it. It certainly doesn't feel like there's been a definitive yes/no answer. Were they fakes? Did Jeff make them? I'm still unsure. I know the Vintage Rebellion, you'll know, Stu, as well as anybody. You had Jeff on once or twice, didn't you? Asking him questions, asking his side of the story. And I have to say that, he came across as somebody that wasn't exactly a criminal mastermind and wasn't out there to deceive. And I still don't know what the score is with it. I don't have a horse in the race. I don't collect baggy figures. I don't own any bag figures apart from my Dengar, Palatoy Dengar. So, yeah, bit of a strange one, really.
Yeah, no, I know we just said we're here more to speak about the aftermath of it, but the last thing I can remember being said was that Jeff was going to send a box full of baggies, I think, over to AFA to be checked and graded or at least verified, and he'd given permission to them to anything that was wrong to be opened. But I can't remember ever seeing a follow-up to that, and it definitely seems to have died down.
The story's definitely run cold.
But like I said, perhaps we could return to that at some point, because it's interesting that it has gone actually quiet. You see Tony mentioned a lot more online than the baggy issue. Now, that's not to say I'm not part of the baggy community. It's not my bag for collecting, so I'm not really in those groups. But so perhaps there is a lot more discussion over there. Steve, Mark just said about it's kind of gone cold. Neither Tony or Jeff were ever really brought to task over what they did or allegedly did. So can you explain how both of them kind of reacted to the scandals at the time?
I think, you're right in saying that they weren't really brought to task. They certainly weren't brought to task legally. Nothing was legally done in either case, as far as I'm aware. But the community did bring them to task. So the community did help hold them both accountable and generally stop buying from them. Tony made that quite easy because Tony disappeared. From my recollections, there wasn't a great deal, if any, denial or argument of what was going on. He just shut up shop. And then, as if by magic, literally a couple of years ago, he started selling again. Completely legitimate products. The sales listings are on eBay. He goes by the name of Mars King on there if you want to either go and look at his sales or, of course, avoid him. And at the moment, he's got 3 of the last 15 Ewok tri-logos on there. He's got a couple of Leia blasters on there. He's got a Walrus Man Jedi mock with a tri-logo bubble. And then I understand this is more of his own personal form of collecting. He's also got a tin robot on there. But yeah, Tony kind of disappeared and has never wanted to take part in conversation. Jeff, on the other hand, didn't go dark. He came forward. He made a post on Star Wars Forum. He did that relatively soon after the accusations, and he was quite clear from his side that he wanted to make amends and he wanted to try and undo some of the mistakes that had happened when he was apparently buying in order to resell items. He has maintained a stance that he wasn't manufacturing those items. And he then went on to both offer a grading company to open up hundreds of baggies and grade the figures as individual figures, loose figures with weapons, in order to get some money together, in order to try and make amends to those he had sold incorrect pieces to, in order to do refunds. It's a really long drawn out process, and it's a really long drawn out thread on Star Wars Forum UK. Nothing like the Toy Toni one that Jez mentioned earlier that goes into the hundreds. This is a 23-page long debate over 26 months that's gone on over there. It's messy, to say the least, because Jeff set himself a date, a timescale in which he would refund up to if people gave him what they believed to be fake items back or return them to him. But that was a crazy short date or timescale initially of only 11 days from when he posted on the forum. That's quite a quick turnaround for that to become widely known that he was making that offer. And Mark's kind of mentioned as well, it's gone very quiet now. It's gone very quiet.
I kind of understand that he needed to make a cut-off point, because I know there's people on there that come back at him and say, well, if you sell fake items, you should always be refunding. But there was a big debate, wasn't there? They're still saying, well, I'm under the impression these things are real. So because baggies and cards, you could see what the blatant iron marks and stuff on the cards. But for a baggie, there's such a minefield of different prints. I'm sure you two designers on here, printing things can change surely from week to week with certain things missing or temporary something else used. I don't know about the printing, but surely there's ways that things could get changed quite regularly.
It'll be screen printing back then. It'd be screen printing. You'd be screen printing 1 or 2, possibly 3 colours maximum on items that really the baggies. It's not the same as, say, printing thousands upon thousands of cards where they're all the same. They would probably print out X amount of bags and then just shove whatever figures in particular runs. Frank is obviously the better man to come on and explain to us about it. But when we're talking about print runs and production, it wasn't an exact science. I bet anybody involved in the production of Star Wars bagged figures would never believe that we would be sitting here now, 40 years later, talking about the finer details of print quality on bagged figures. It's it's crazy to say the least. But when you're paying hundreds of pounds for a certain figure in a bag or a box or whatever, then all of a sudden it starts to become important. With regards to print, there's so many different variations. And looking at some of the pictures of the evidence, we're getting into some really, really fine detail. Jeff, or whoever Jeff was buying from, was going to some considerable effort to produce these things. And he wasn't just producing one type of bag, he was producing several by the looks of it, because there was several different things that he was knocking out. It's such a strange thing to want to sort of dupe, really. I'm not saying that they're not fakes. I dare say that Frank probably has got more reason than any to say that they are.
Now, like we said, we wanted to look at the aftermath, what effect this had on the market. Now, I'm going to come back to you again, Mark. The Toni scandal affected the Palatoy market, but has it really affected the Palatoy market? Like you've already alluded to, Jason Smith did a lot of work identifying the fakes. He's become the go-to guy for confirmation. I see if someone's questioning a card, he's tagged straight away. So first of all, has it affected the Palatoy market, the Palatoy prices? Have people still got confidence in the product they're buying? And do you believe that everything that has been to learn about this scandal is done?
It hasn't affected the market one iota, I don't think. I think when it initially hit, everybody was running around panicking. Have I got a Toy Toni? Have I got a Toy Toni? It's suddenly not worth what I paid for it. But I think that's kind of evened out now. I think people are a bit more confident on buying certain figures that Toni had, knowing full well that a lot of the telltale signs have been identified thanks to thanks to Jason and a few others. Poor old Jason, he gets tagged in every single Toy Toni post there is on Facebook. He must get so sick of it after a while. But, he is the main guy when it comes to this, and he was definitely the best man for the job on that, because he really went to town on trying to identify all the different sort of telltale signs. He really did his homework. And there was, like I say, there was a few other guys involved as well. In many respects, some people actually don't mind a Toy Toni if it means filling a gap or completing a run, or just out of curiosity, just to say that they've got a Toy Toni card. In some ways, they become sort of collectible in themselves. And the strange thing about that whole story, if Tony had not bothered with going to the efforts of trying to match up figures and bubbles and going to the hassle of sticking them onto cards, he'd have made so much more money just keeping the cards separate and having them as proof cards, selling them as proof cards. He'd have made a fortune, an absolute fortune, especially now. It's just ironic, really.
Like I've had a couple of collectors when I was doing interviews for the Vintage Rebellion around that time saying that in the old like chess and shows and all that kind of stuff, there was always rumours that Tony had created these cards. They were always circulating and being spoken about. You've got no recollection of that?
I personally don't. I don't ever remember speaking to anybody back in Cheshunt, Stevenage or Westminster or any of those memorabilia fairs. I'm sure it was probably spoke to, but I never really took any notice, because back then carded figures were so cheap anyway. Anybody going to the trouble of trying to bloody knot one up and make a £5 out of it was just a moron. Clearly not the most financial wizard, the biggest financial wizard in the room, that's for sure. You were still picking up Palatoy carded figures for under £50 for certain. Very strange story.
Now, Jez, it is a big shame Si's not here to answer this, because I know that he still buys Tony cards. I think he will tell you that it's a good way of getting legitimate parts on some very rare cards and very good conditions. Now, so they are still very desirable. I think we've only just seen this week a Tony Fett sell for £350 in an auction. So, first of all, what kind of money are these going for? How do you feel when you see people like Michael Havens, who is very against a Toy Toni card? He will get them in hand and he will just slice the bubble off.
Right, okay. Addressing your first point then. So price-wise, yeah, as you said, Simon's all over this. So I've actually spoken with Si earlier on, who, as you know, couldn't come on. However, we just did have a little discussion about this. He said low end, you're talking sort of the 3PO, around about £70 to £80. Fett is typically high, as you could imagine, and have sold for about £1,200. But as you say, then the Stacey's auction it was £300 this week. So yeah, complete bargain. So yeah, £70 to £80. Desirability point of view, I would be interested in one. I quite like curating collection and talking about it. I don't think people would be necessarily interested in it apart from people who are actual collectors. So from a curation point of view, it doesn't really do much for me. But I'd get one. Whereas if you had asked me about 4 years ago, I probably would have said absolutely not. So in value increase, have they shot up? They have recovered in price, but they haven't increased in value at the same rate that normal carded figures have gone. I mean, Simon's got quite a few, but he's not paid more than 75 for any of his. And that's pretty much it from a prices point of view. Now, with regards to people ripping them off, I mean, yeah, obviously he's done that for effect because we're still talking about it, or you're talking about it now. Hadn't actually wasn't aware of that in the first place. Do I really care about him ripping them off? No, even though it's very, very similar to original carded figures, which I would do. For me, no. If someone wants to take a figure off of a Toy Toni, I think it's a shame. I think it's not necessarily a sensible thing, or not, I don't see the personal gain. I don't see the point, because you're not, these people who wanted the uncirculated, the U grade, because for whatever reason they want a figure which has not been touched, apart from the people in the factory who wanted an untouched figure. But what they're doing is just taking off a second-hand figure. And so where's the benefit? Why would he do this? I mean, you asked me how I feel about it, but my question, which I'm putting back, is why is he doing it? I don't get it.
Well, the IC, the stance over at the IC is that Toy Tonies are reproductions. Now, the IC has a lot of members over there who kind of listen to their admins over there, and they take what they say is gospel, and they class them as reproduction items, although all the parts are vintage. So you've got a group over there of, I don't know how many people are in it now, 10, 11,000, who will all deem these are reproduction items and will destroy them. You think each to their own when it comes to that kind of thing?
They're not reproductions because they are original bits. They're original figures, original bubbles, original cards. They're just not the original glue. For people to get het up about destroying these things, I think there are more important things in the world to get worried about right now. Unfortunately, I don't really have much of an opinion on it because I just think that's all a bit silly, really.
Fair enough. You said that you would possibly buy one to put in your collection to curate. I think that's quite a good point, especially one with just got really blatant iron marks and stuff on it. Perhaps a bad example. Would you go down the same route with the baggies? Would you have a fake baggie for the same, or do you think it's not the same distinguished proof on there?
People start talking about baggies to me, and I want to go and put the kettle on. They just bore me, right? I've got a loose figure, which is great, because that's nostalgia, and I can see it, I can pick it up, and in the case of the TIE Fighter pilot, I can smell it, right? Or you've got the mint on carded figures, which aesthetically are very, very pleasing to me. I'm stifling a yawn when you talk to me about baggies. I don't get it. So would I actually want a fake, boring piece of Star Wars memorabilia? No, of course I wouldn't. I'm not interested in baggies. God, I'm really moody tonight, aren't I?
Yeah, that's a life of being teabagged in the Navy.
Jez, I totally agree with you, mate. I can't see the draw to them. I mean, obviously there are people out there that collect them and fair play, but there's something about them that just don't interest me at all.
I agree, actually. I bought a Greedo one, and the thing that annoys me with it is I cannot make it look nice on display, and that really bugs me. But from two people who aren't keen on baggies to the most passionate of baggy people in our crew now, baggies have always been a bit of a minefield area, but now since I've come back into collecting, the mailer business and the baggy business, the prices are huge. I often look out for the Greedo and the Blue Snag 2-pack, and you're looking over a couple of grand easy now for that 2-pack, which seems nuts to me. So has the scandal damaged the baggy area of the hobby, Craig? And how do you go really about authenticating a baggy? Because is there too much personal interest in the people that are authenticating them?
Before I get into that, I have to, full disclosure, I'm kind of with the majority of the team on this one. They're not really my thing either. I kind of get it in the context of a boxed toy or the early bird kit, or the Jawa that goes in the land of the Jawas. I kind of understand that side of it, but having them to put on display, I'd rather not have my figures in a crinkly plastic bag. But that's just me. Fair play to those people who do love this. And I think my take on it, has it damaged the area of the hobby? I think the prices are still high. I think they still collect a fair whack for what they are. And I think, my take is that the people who are in it know it. I think that if it's a niche thing, it's way more niche than collecting figures that are mint on card. I think with that comes a certain degree of detail and knowledge if you're going to be into that side of collecting. I mean, I have done some research on the back of this topic. There are 25 Kenner baggy types. I mean, 25. I mean, that's remarkable. And there is a fantastic write-up on this topic on the Star Wars Collectors Archive by Todd DeMartino and Bill Wills. And it doesn't make reference to Baggiegate or anything like that, but it's a phenomenal breakdown of the baggies that are available. But what's really interesting, what I found particularly noteworthy, is that there are, at the end of this article, there are 9 different tells, things to look for that will help you identify a baggie as the real deal or not. And when you compare that to Toy Toni, which is basically the iron marks and what type of figure it is and what card, 9 different sort of checks on something, I would say is quite thorough, and it ranges from, do we know that figure came in that bag, which is a kind of obvious criteria to judge something against, but also sizes. People trim these off and reseal them, so you can tell if that's happened, by looking at the size compared to a known legit thing. So there are a number of ways to identify these things if that's what you're into. We all want our hobby to be an exact science, and it's not. I think whether you're putting a catalogue in a box, or you're trying to authenticate one baggie against another, we know the commercial realities of how these things are put together, and it's like, oh, Doris, we've run out of those bags. I think we've got some others in the storeroom. Hang on, we'll put them in these. And that's the real world, and we're all analysing this stuff at a great distance now and trying to put some science around it. And it is still very variable, I think.
Just out of interest, Steve, do you like baggies? Or we can make it a full house.
Not really. I did have a few in the width of my collection for a period. I had a few of the Han Solo ones. It felt like I should have them. I didn't really have much passion or love for them. The one thing I did like, and Mark noted about having one himself, it was the mailaways. I did, even though it's a very cheap and accessible item. I like getting the Emperor in his little mailaway. I thought that was a really cool thing. I
think there's a bit more, like you say, Jez likes to curate his collection. I think the mailers have that backstory and a bit more interest to go with it than a figure in a bag. And I get it when they came in along with ships, or the Jabba's Dungeon coming with 3 figures and all that kind of stuff. Totally get that. Yeah, not a lot of love here for baggies. Yeah, each to their own.
So what we said about Toy Toni didn't really say anything, went completely silent, whereas Jeff was there sort of trying to do his thing. When I was going through the forum, Jason Smith, who was, as I said, one of the guys who was really, really affected by the Toy Toni scandal, wrote to Tony, sent him an email, and he posted on the forum saying, "This is what I've just got from Tony." And it was funny going through the threads, because I was able to see one of my original posts. I saw Grant's posts and people just talking about that. And there was actually one post which I put on, which was just the day later, where you can see on these forums who's online and who's reading certain things. Toy Toni was actually online reading Star Wars Forum UK and looking at that thread, because the forum username I could see at the bottom. So I actually put a comment on saying Toy Toni is online and reading this. Come on, dude, folk are rooting for you. Because in that first 24 hours, people weren't sure what was true. There was a lot of stuff about Jason Joyner's reputation and about him, wherever Jason was, there was scandal himself, and it was Jason who had dropped this whole Toy Toni thing. So there was all sorts of people sort of sniffing things and sort of saying, hang on a second, well, this is all wrong, not knowing what to believe. But Jason Smith put on, "I've received this email reply from Toy Toni," and I quote, "Hi, yes, it's come as news to me also. I'll check out the post later. As you may know, I've been selling carded figures for the last 25 years. Many have been graded by AFA and UKG, so it's somewhat bizarre that he should come up with this nonsense in 2013. Thanks, Tony." So that was the one and only sort of email acknowledgement that Tony has made on this whole thing before going silent. So I'm just saying that, he's been doing it for 25 years, so this is nonsense. So there we go. It was interesting read, though, just to see what we were all writing 7 years ago on this.
3PO, you tell that slimy piece of worm-ridden filth he'll get no such pleasure from us, right?
So moving on to topic 4, something else which has pricked certain areas of the collecting community now. Now, Kim Simmons, who most people will know, did the photography of the toys back in the day, and he now runs the Man Who Shot Luke Skywalker website. It's on Facebook, where you can buy prints of the original artwork. He released a book last year with some of the original artwork, and he's been doing a Kickstarter campaign for a second volume of his book. Now, however, he had a substantial contribution of $3,000 from the fansstrikeback.com, which is connected to one of you might know this a bit better. Lord Sith Creations, is it? Is it Lord Sith? Mark, you were Sith Lord. That's the one. Yeah, I was close. Just got them in the wrong order. which obviously pushed their total on Kickstarter to near their target. However, this caused uproar. I saw it on several Facebook groups about people not being happy, and on the forum, because they were back in a campaign and they are just known for reproduction weapons and figures. Craig, let's come to you, because I asked you to take a look at the Fan Strike Back website and tell us what items are a blatant reproduction, because basically Kim had come on and said to the community, I let them back us. I thought they were just people that made customs, but that isn't the case, is it?
No, and I think even the name of the website is quite provocative. The Fan Strike Back. It's, I think, seen through this lens, it's sort of, all of this just whiffs a bit. So you go on their website and they sell what they call custom figures, but when you look at them, they are reproductions of vintage carded figures. And you've got items on there like Blue Snaggletooth, Yak Face, Luke Stormtrooper. They do a red bar, R5 default. So they know what collectors are valuing. They know that these are the big ticket items. They know these are the bits that fetch the money that people want, which indicates to me that they're faking this stuff. And one of the most shocking things I saw was their 100 Star Wars action figure replacement weapons bulk box, which they sell for over $99. And it's just, the language they use, that they talk about passing the float test. They talk about Luke Stormtrooper coming with a solid black blaster. It's all these things that people obsess about when they are passionate about, having the genuine article. So, that to me says they know what they're doing. They know these are fakes, but they're badging it in this word custom. And it's just, people aren't buying it.
No, surely if they were just customizing it, why are they working on things that are going to pass the float test?
Yeah.
That just seems like a massive issue to start with. I know they obviously clearly panicked when this started getting called out, because this was called out on all over the place. And I read on the IC there was a thread going over there that there was backers over there, because the IC are so against reproduction. There was other backers on their thread saying, well, I'm going to pull my funding. So consequently, it was big news. Now, Steve, I'm going to come over to you, because Kim and Justin, who are doing the book, then announced that they are going to take the decision to remove the donation. So can you take us through what kind of announcement they made?
Yeah, they came on and they were quite clear and quite open that they could understand that this wasn't a donation or a contribution from a group or people working in a way that suited the hobby and the community of the hobby. So they actually went on to say, and I'll quote, on behalf of myself and Kim, this is written by Justin, we have decided to not accept the $3,000 contribution from the Fan Strike Back due to the issue of reproduction items being associated with their website. While we cannot choose who contributes to the Kickstarter campaign, this is a very serious issue with the Kenner Star Wars fans, and we felt it was the right thing to do and have asked them to withdraw their contribution. This sets us back from meeting the halfway mark, so any of you who have been on the fence because of this, we ask you that you please now contribute and help to get us to our goal. Seems very fair.
It does. Now, we wrote these show notes at the beginning of the week. Now, things have developed a little since here. So first of all, Craig, I'm just going to come back to you, because what Steve has just read there, I think was like a Saturday, Sunday kind of announcement. But yesterday, Wednesday, the 1st of July, there was a bit more breaking news on it, because the Fan Strike Back made their own public statement, didn't they?
The Fan Strike Back struck back.
They've turned it on its head, haven't they? They've turned it on its head and said, actually, the money has been accepted. It needs to legally be accepted. And it's done a complete 180, and no one saw that coming.
Depending on what browser you're using, there's a 3-page missive around why they feel they are in the right to donate this money, and it's a rallying call to against the Repro zealots, and I'm quoting there. Yes, the anti-Repro orthodoxy. So it's quite vehemently opposed to the community view that we should police our vintage plastic, and they're very much of the view that, hey, this is all fun, it's toys, we've as much right to be part of this as anyone else.
Yeah, it was 3 pages, wasn't it, of interesting things, and And they do state that one of the authors is actually quite happy with their funding, if I remember rightly.
Well, I guess Kim Simmons himself he's not a member of the collecting community per se. I'm sure he's not as involved or as passionate about the issues that this highlights. You can forgive him for that to some degree, but it's Justin who's obviously the Kickstarter manager who's kind of taking a lead in this and trying to do what's right by the community.
So Mark, from Greg's just said it, Kim isn't actually a particular collector or heavily involved in the community apart from more as a business and selling his items that are linked to the community. Should he really be concerned where the money is coming from? If you were in his shoes, would you take the same decision? Would you accept the money, not accept the money?
I wouldn't, because I'm anti-repro. But Kim might not give a damn whether something's reproduction or not. I don't know what his stance is. It's a completely personal decision. It wouldn't sit comfortably with me. I would want to know where money was coming from. If it was coming from an organisation that I didn't agree with or felt like I wanted their support, then I would reject it, definitely.
I think there's a business aspect to that as well, though, isn't there? Because this is his audience. These are the people that are going to buy his book.
Some people are going to feel strongly about it enough not to want to buy his book, and there's going to be others that are just not going to be bothered.
Straight after the announcement of the message from Fan Strike Back yesterday, straight away 3 or 4 people on Star Wars Forum had posted that they would have bought the book and were now withdrawing it. It's my understanding that because of the level of the donation on the Kickstarter, the Fan Strike Back details will be printed in the book and will be classed as customizers rather than what they're doing. So I do think there is advertising for them as part of the rewards for donating so much money. And Craig's totally right. You've only got to look at the groups I'm on. I don't think reproduction is allowed in any of them, is accepted in any of them. So if he accepts this kind of money when the community is saying no, he's really kind of blocking the market where people are going to buy his book, and that might well come back to bite him on the bum. So Jez, I know we're not going to get into a massive repro debate tonight, but some people will listen to us and will be thinking, well, what's really the issue? So can you explain why this has such a detrimental effect on the hobby and why people are deciding not to support the book?
If there is $3,000 just kicking around and they can't figure out what to do with it, you can send it to my Stormtrooper Run charity page, because quite frankly, I couldn't care where that money came from as long as the money ends up going into charity pot. And that might sound terrible of me, but if that money has been accrued, then send it to Make-A-Wish and Spread a Smile. That would be very, very appreciated. And you people who like the repro stuff, that could, you could do well out of that. Anyway, what is reproduction? Why is it so bad? Well, it's fake, isn't it? It's not genuine. It's artificial representations of vintage items. I mean, that's just like slapping Rolex on a cheap watch or putting a cut and shut car thing together. It's not real. There's then the issue that you could be hoodwinking people. You've seen it before where people have been having reproduction yak faces or blue snaggletooths and then putting them in a collection of figures which are sold in a big ice cream tub of figures by someone who's sort of pretending that they don't really know what they're doing, and people are like, oh, look at this, oh, I can get this amazing deal. And it's just it's false, it's forgery, it's fake, it's not right, and that's why there's so much against it. People are being done out of their money. They're buying figures which have got weapons where some of these weapons themselves and the accessories cost more than a figure, and it's just not on. People don't know whether or not they're coming or going now with half of this stuff, and it takes away the pleasure of collecting by having this extra minefield of repro. There's no nostalgia, there's no history, there's no collecting journey. It's just fake.
Now, just want you all to answer this. First of all, is this a book you would have been tempted to buy? But if you know that someone, is being funded by something that harms the hobby, would that make you not purchase the book? Does it have that much sway, or would you still go and support the book? Okay, that's open to everyone. I'd like to hear everyone's answer on that.
Would I be interested in buying the book? No, I didn't buy the first one. Yeah, I think that, I manage my budgets to my means, and buying lots of new collecting books and things that kind of celebrate the hobby rather than buying stuff that adds to the collection. I would always sort of veer towards the latter.
But if it was something you were interested in, Craig, would the funding affect your decision on then not deciding to buy it?
It's a good question. You know, on something like this, I would probably, you know, make my stand with the community and not go for it.
Yeah, interesting. Steve, what about you?
It's a really tough one, isn't it? It's not a book that's of interest to me, and I think I've jumped on the bandwagon of most of the collecting books that have come out over the last probably decade or so, and for some reason this one didn't bite with me at all. You're looking at about 4.5% of the total funding to get the book published coming for this £3,000. It's not huge, but it's not insignificant. We're not talking like less than 1%. We're talking, you know, it's still a chunk of cash there. I don't think I'm now I know the whole story. I don't think I'd be overly comfortable buying this book if that goes forward and that Repro manufacturers have part funded it. No, I don't think it's for me.
Jez?
No, mate. There are so many collecting books out there. You know, there really are. You know, I've got several, but this is way down the list for me. And because of, you know, everything which we've discussed, very much like Stephen, yeah. Sorry, it's just a little bit tainted.
And Mark?
No. It's not a book that I would buy. And it knowingly, if it's supported by an organisation that is knocking repros out, then no, because I'm anti-repro. However, if it was a book that I did want to look at and was interested in, was supported by a repro organisation, then what I would do is look at a mate's.
Well, you've got to find one of them first, mate. It might be easier buying the book. I did buy the first book. I think it arrived in the UK in about November time. Richard did a big bulk lot, and I still haven't got it yet. So it's sitting in Richard's house. I told Rich to hold on to it till he saw me. Little did I know of COVID. I'm going to be honest, it's not a book I thought, I must get. But for some reason, Richard was like, oh yeah, I'm going to do a big bulk buy. And I'm just so weak when I see something like that. I just like to add to the thread and say, yes, I want to be involved. It wasn't a cheap book.
I could just imagine you there at your little keyboard going, oh, I want to get involved. And then just log on. Bless you.
Yeah, it's just like, yeah, count me in. But yeah, their response, and if they're being backed by that, wouldn't be interested. It would put me off, and it would be a good excuse not to spend money, which are necessary. I've got several collecting books which I've bought and probably had one good toilet read of.
I got an amazing idea.
For a second, mate, I reckon you've had several opportunities to spend half an hour in the toilet with a book.
I love a good book on the toilet.
Kay's catalogue.
Again, boys, we're all in agreement. You know, no repro. And if they have gone down that route, then I think that could be a big mistake for them in the collecting market. Again, actually, Stefan's popped up a few times tonight, but he's been someone that's certainly been researching and sharing the information about where that funding is coming from. Obviously, he is a member of the admin team over on the Javas Court groups, and they are very, very anti-repro and even run their reproduction clinics at UK-based events.
It's always been a danger, but it looms like a shadow over everything we've built here. But things have developed that'll ensure security. I've just made a deal that'll keep the Empire out of here forever. I had no choice. They arrived right before you did. I'm sorry.
To close out on the topics tonight, I want to say just a little light-hearted, because we talked about old scams and we talked about reproduction funding stuff there, and just a nice light-hearted finish for vintage toys within Star Wars that were a little bit confusing. Now, I did put in the show notes about the Imperial attack base, obvious one that would spring to mind. An Imperial base on Hoth doesn't match up to the movies. A base that attacks is a weird concept. It would have made much more sense as a rebel base. So I come up with a couple of others in my head. So I wanted you to have a think about maybe the box art on stuff, or maybe what is something called, or the concept of something. So let's go round. Steve, you're the guest here, so I'll let you go first, because if anyone else has chosen the same thing as you, come up with something better.
I think the most confusing thing for me was the Luke X-Wing pilot's black hair, which apparently, much, much later in life, I found out was a visor. That confused me forever. I thought it was a very strange thing that, had to be explained to me probably only 10 years ago, that it wasn't actually black hair. So there you go. That was confusing.
I thought it was his hair as well, up to about the age of about 37. Did everyone think that was his hair?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, you lads clearly haven't got as many brain cells as I have, because I always knew it was a visor.
Yeah. Craig?
I've got a few. The first one, I did sort of imagine, an 8-year-old Craig getting his Han Solo from Asda and ripping it off the card. And what really confused me about it was the holes in the bottom of his feet, because I had no context of that they would fit on things. So to 8-year-old Craig, they were only one thing, and that was rocket boots. So that, honestly, that was a figure on its own. It's got, what are these holes in it? And my dad didn't have any other action figures that had holes in their feet. It was only sort of, a short while after that I realised that, you got stands and they could sit on play sets, and that's what they were for. But I used to fly them around the playground because his little rocket boots would take him anywhere. And I was always confused why Boba Fett's rocket didn't come out. It looked like it should come out, and I remember trying to yank that thing out of his back. Because
I remember it being advertised as going to be coming out.
No, I remember getting the figure going, why doesn't that come out? It looked like it should, and I was determined that it would come out, and it didn't. So that was another one. Shall I keep going?
Yeah.
So another thing that confused me was the upside down hanging feature on the Star Destroyer playset, which on some of the promotional material showed Luke and I think it was Leia sort of hanging upside down, which obviously didn't feature in the movies. Although Luke was upside down twice in Empire, when he was captured by the Wampa and when he was doing handstands for Yoda. So I don't know, this fascination with having Luke upside down, that confused me. Battle damage stickers on the X-Wing, I didn't really understand, because his X-Wing didn't get shot up, but his Snowspeeder did. One other thing, right? I'm going to put it in the group, and I'm going to show you this because it's confused me for a good while. So this is the promotional poster for the Empire Strikes Back toys for Palatoy, and there was an image of INT4, and it's clearly a prototype, and there's a stormtrooper sat in there. You can just see the top of his helmet, but the mechanism, the arm that controls the wing is white. It's not black. But when you look at this image, it looks like the stormtrooper.
He's holding it. He's got to pull his own wings in.
And I remember seeing that, thinking, what the hell's going on with that? So there you go.
I never would have picked up on that. The things you notice. Mark?
Yeah, a couple of things for me. Palatoy talking R2-D2. What was all that about? It didn't make any sense. I mean, if it just got like loads of beeping and stuff, great. Or I think one of them was Leia's message, wasn't it? But yeah, it not very good. I had that as a kid as well, and even as a kid, when I pressed the button, I said, "Why? My name is R2-D2. What's he talking about?" And then the second one, which goes back to actually what Craig mentioned about Star Destroyer playset, which was again something else I had as a kid, and it always confused me. Was, it's the front section of the Star Destroyer, and it was just a really sort of cobbled together playset. It was, it wasn't very good. I remember buying it because my mum saw it on discount in a shop, and it was heavily discounted. I remember getting it out and looking at the box thinking, oh, that looks really cool, and then getting it out and laying it out and making it all up. And there's like two little door sections, and it looked as though Palatoy or Kenner had maybe had the foresight to maybe bring in another section. So you got the front section as one play set, and then you bought the back section as another play set, and then maybe the bridge would be another play set, and you sort of connected it all together to make this super Star Destroyer play set. A bit like the flag, the USS Flag in G.I. Joe range. I mean, that thing was massive. It's just a really naff play set. It's just crap. What I think would have worked better would have been another cardboard playset, much like the Death Star playset. If they'd have done a cardboard Death Star playset, Star Destroyer playset, I think that would have been fantastic. With like a little docking bay, and a bridge, sort of elevated, gunner section at the front, maybe a prison, trooper quarters, armory, engine room, and I think they would have looked fantastic.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, it is a bit of a cobbled together playset, isn't it? Trying to fit too many different scenes into a small area.
Yeah,
it's rubbish.
Jez, what about you?
The biggest thing, right? The lightsabers. Lightsabers coming out of your arm, right? Forget the fact that original Luke has got a yellow one, all right? We don't have time for that. I actually, as a kid, broke off the tips of my Vader and my Luke because it's either the lightsaber is on or it's not. I don't need a little thing sticking half out. It's either on or it's not. So then by breaking the tip off, which I've seen so many other kids doing, they weren't broken off accidentally. Loads of people actually removed these because they wanted the lightsaber concealed up the arm. So that was a very, very peculiar thing, having the lightsaber stowed the way it was. So that's one thing. Prune face. I mean, you talk about finding out about Luke Skywalker's visor as opposed to hair, but it was only in the last, say, 5-6 years that I realised prune face was actually a goodie. And when I, paused the DVD, it was like, oh yeah, there he is at the back of the briefing room and briefly seen in the Imperial shuttle.
You always expect him to be a Jabba's goon, don't you?
You totally do, 100%. Yeah. There's other little things like, so when you think of the MLC3, well, I just think of Diamonds Are Forever and Sean Connery in that little thing in America, in the little moon buggy dune thing, because that MLC3 was closer to James Bond's Diamonds Are Forever than it was a Star Wars movie. Endor Forest Ranger tripping on something or other there, that was pretty cool. But then again, I was looking at Darth Vader's Star Destroyer, which in itself is just an odd ship. But the Jabba the Hutt dungeon.
Oh, I'm glad you brought this up.
I mean, you look at things like the Jabba the Hutt dungeon and the droid factory. It's like, come on, give me some actually screen accurate stuff. Star Wars is such a beautiful world of so many different environs where, we've got all these different things, all these different scenes. And you give me something which doesn't even remarkably look close to what we saw in the movie. Come on, must try harder, Ken.
do you know what? The droid factory is a bit of fun and does kind of connect to the Sandcrawler and the Jawas with Droid Park. But the Jabba's dungeon, I haven't had a picture of it the other day. I've never owned one. It does nothing. It is really just the droid factory tray, isn't it? Really with a crane. Someone please defend it because I do not understand it as a toy.
There is no defence for the indefensible.
It's really odd.
It was, we've got all this stuff left over. How can we bag it up and knock it out, and what can we sell it as? And it's just a cheap and nasty product. There's no thought, there's no imagination. It was just bagged figures and tooling from an old play set in different colours and new box art, and that was it. There's no other sort of rhyme or reason to it. It was just end of the line. Let's get it out there.
I mean, can you imagine if I opened that up and got it out? I would be like, take aside that it had 3 figures in it, which just as well it did. I would have just thought, well, I don't really know what I've bought here. Just a lump of plastic. The AT-AT's quite confusing, isn't it? I know we on the first podcast.
What?
Yeah. Now hear me out. Okay, so I know on the first podcast we looked at stuff that wasn't made, and there was the loading transport. But how are they getting in there? See, they dropped that on Hoth. The people are already in it, but what they do? Does he bend his legs down like a dog? How are they getting in that thing, in and out? When they suddenly land on the Imperial base, right? Yeah. The Rebel base, even. What are they doing? Quickly getting out a ladder and all like running down steps.
They're already in it. They're already in it, aren't they?
Yeah, but how are they getting out to then attack? If they're getting out in the back, the troopers.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, I see what you mean. Well,
it's not exactly a smooth transition, is it?
Yeah, they will fast rope down like you would do from a rotary wing aircraft. So yeah, you just fast rope. It's easy. It's easy.
Yes, it's easy in the snow. No guns at the back as well. Just go around the back of it and shoot it. It's going to take an hour to turn around, isn't it?
Yeah, but have you ever seen? You don't go behind a donkey, do you, or a horse? Why? Because they kick you, right? That's what the AT-AT will do. The AT-AT will back kick you. It'll drop kick you, and then it'll do roundhouse.
They got a few things wrong on that, I think. They look amazing, but they're not really practical, are they?
You wash your whole mouth out. That was amazing, and it's totally accurate.
If they turned up with you tomorrow, Jess, and go, right, so you're gonna finish off your tour here by walking around this massive metal dog, across the desert.
I say, sign me up, baby.
I bet you would.
You bloody love that.
Amazing.
Shot down straight away, but yeah. Well, there you go. So it would be great to hear what other things that are confusing. I'm sure there's plenty.
Activate meditation chamber.
From Kenner's Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back collection, new Darth Vader Star Destroyer that you put together, batteries not included.
Darth Vader's stronger now. He's got moves.
New Luke Skywalker. Action figures each sold separately. You can slide the viewing screen, turn Darth on the command bridge, and make Luke escape through the hidden hatch.
Test the laser cannon. We gotta find Luke.
Darth Vader Star Destroyer from Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back collection. Action figures each sold separately. New from Kenner.
Just before we close out for the night, like last month, we came up with a little game just to finish off the show. And I thought, I'll just do it again. 2-3 minutes. We don't want anything too long or too time consuming. So in 2 teams again, I sent out 20 people a message the early part of this week and asked them for their top 10 Return of the Jedi figures. So first of all, thank you to the people that responded and helped me out on this. Now I'm going to split you into 2 teams. Now, Mark and Steve, you two can go together because you grew up in the same area. And apologies, Craig, that only leaves Jez.
That's all right. Dream team.
But it's okay because later in the year we will be playing Trivial Pursuit and Jez is going to wipe the floor with all of it. So we're going to play a little game of basically play your cards right. I've put these items in a list of the top 20. So I'm going to give you the figure and then you're going to get the next figure and you've got to tell me whether it's higher or lower in the list of 20. So I have got them all on a wheel to decide. We're going to go Steve and Mark first, okay? So the first figure that we are looking at in my list. So it's come up with no, it hasn't. Lando Skiff, okay? So Mark and Steve. Lando Skiff was voted the 3rd favourite amongst the people I asked. So just going to spin the wheel again. Do you think Squidhead was higher or lower on the list?
Lower.
Lower.
I would say, Steve. What do you reckon, mate?
Yeah, lower. Absolutely.
We're going lowest, Stu.
That's a good choice, especially being 3rd with the Lando Skiff. Squidhead is 8th, so that gives them a bit of a harder. So 8th Squidhead, Jez and Craig. You have got Rees. Do you think he would be higher or lower voted by these scoundrels?
What I think is just a bit of advice. Don't necessarily go with what I say because I don't do very well in quizzes. Squidhead has got the accessories. You know, you're talking. It's got the skirt, it's got the cape, it's got the belt, it's got the staff. So extra kudos for that, really. Rees is an interesting character with a shady past. So I'm quite content for you to go with what you think.
A little bit higher, but not much.
You think Rees is higher?
Oh, sorry, no. Yeah, Squidhead's higher.
I think Squidhead might just have the edge here.
Sorry, yeah, lower.
Okay, you're correct to go lower. Rees was down in 18th, which Steve and Mark will be happy with because there can only be 2 figures below them. So Steve and Mark, Leia Poncho has come out.
Oh, it's got to be higher.
Yeah, it's got to be higher.
100% higher.
Both confident with that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes, well done. Leia Poncho is up in 6th, so not as straightforward for the other 2 again. So you boys, bit of Leia. How about a bit of Han Trench? Do you think he's higher or lower than Leia Poncho?
What's your initial thoughts?
My initial thoughts are Han would be lower than Leia.
Oh, tricky one. Okay.
I just think she's a very elegant figure.
I'm just trying to think of the 5 figures ahead of her then. Do these include Power of the Force, or is this just up
purely
to
the
77?
Return of the Jedi run,
right.
yeah.
Return of Jen. Right, okay. I don't know. I mean, when I think of decent figures ahead of her... All right, let's go with what you're saying. That she has the edge over Han. I think it's going to be close.
Han is down in 15th. You were right to follow Craig's lead there. So Han,
well done.
15th. So Steve and Mark, you're looking at a 15th here. We're going up with a Leia Bouche. Han Trench versus Leia Bouche. It's Leia Han Leia here.
Leia Bouche, much higher.
I would say so, yeah. Higher for Leia Bouche.
Higher for Leia Bouche. Well, you did well to go with that. She's up in 2nd. But it does give Craig and Jez an easy run here. Now just spun the wheel. Craig and Jez, Leia Bouche is 2nd. You're going higher or lower. The figure is the Emperor's Royal Guard.
He's the one figure I'd put higher.
Yeah, see, I think, no, this is obviously sharing a lot with the other 2 who would already be aware of this anyway. I would say that Luke Jedi is probably top 3. And bearing in mind, we've already got a 2.
We already had a number 3 as well.
Have we had a number 3?
Yeah, Land of Skiff. That's where we started.
Skiff, yeah. Emperor's Royal Guard is
Leia Bouche was second. There's 18 figures above her and 1 figure below her.
Oh, you're such a little tinker. Go on, Craig.
It's a popular figure.
It's a popular figure. Luke Jedi. Luke. Oh, I see. Oh.
The odds are against us, aren't they?
Go on. Go with it, because I trust.
Put all our money on red.
Stu, we're going with Craig's answer.
Which was Craig?
Hang on. Which way around is it again?
Higher will be better. Lower will be worse.
Right, higher. Yeah.
You're going higher. So Leia Bouche was second. You were right to go with it, Craig. She was first. Which does mean you've given the other 2 a bit of an easy answer here. you boys have got Admiral Akbar.
Oh no!
Do you think he's higher or lower?
Oh, this is a trap.
Oh, I think we'll go lower, shall we? Lower than number 1.
You're right. Akbar's down in 14th, which is going to give the other boys another problem. But they just did very well. They took a risk rather than playing the numbers. Boys, 14th was Admiral Akbar. You've just spun out Emperor.
Oh. See, I think people will prefer him for the relevance of the figure, even though it should have been a cloaked better figure. It's a pretty rubbish figure, but it has relevance. So that's why I think it needs to be in the sort of above 14th.
Yeah, I agree. There ain't no Return of the Jedi without the Emperor.
A more popular figure than Admiral Akbar. Ultimate fish face. The ultimate Jez. 14th's Akbar. You're going higher, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well done. The Emperor was the 11th favourite. We're in the middle of a bit of middle ground here, because Steve and Mark, you've got Weekie has come out. Weekway, whichever way you want to say it.
We'll say it the correct way, which is weak way.
Oh, I knew that. I just like to sometimes mix it up a bit, Mark. That's what makes me so interesting.
No, I would go for lower. What do you reckon, Steve?
Yeah, I think lower.
Good shout, because he is 20th, which consequently the other 2 had it easy last time. You 2 had it easy this time. Now Jez and Craig are going to have it easy. Craig and Jez, you got Wicket, but knowing that Weekway is 20th, I think you might know where this is going to go. It is. He's in 17th. 17th, we're running out and everything's still level. So Steve and Mark, 17th was Wicket. We're looking at Klaatu, the skirted Klaatu, not the skiff guard. 17th is Wicket. Is he higher or lower than Wicket?
What's it out of 20?
Yeah.
Yeah, below him there's only a gap for 19th place now.
I want to say, Steve, I'm really impressed. I wondered whether anyone else would be switched on to that, to be marking off where the numbers are gone.
Oh yeah. I've got my little list of.
So Steve and Mark have got an advantage here because they've used their common sense.
Well, Steve has. I never liked Klaatu. I don't know, mate. What's your thoughts?
I am tempted to put him 19th in between Weekway and Rees. I think that's kind of where he sits.
I would agree with you, mate, and I think it's worth the risk. What do you reckon?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Yeah, okay, we're going to go for lower.
Wow, the balls here. The balls are big, and that's why you've got it right. He was 19th. Well done, lads. Again, though, you've given the other 2 an easy in. They've got an easy in. Rebel Commando, Jez and Craig.
Go on, Craig.
Oh, he's higher then, isn't he?
He has to be higher. We don't need to confer here.
Surprisingly, actually, he did well. He got up into 10th. So that gives Steve and Mark a little bit of a problem, because he's in 10th. You got 9 num. Rebel Commando's 10th.
We got below 10, Steve. Do you know?
There's the gap in 12th, 13th, and 16th.
He's got to be lower than the Rebel Commando.
I think so. I would say he's either 12th or 13th.
Well, he's still wearing his pajamas, isn't he? So let's go for lower.
Well done, boys. He's in 13th.
Yeah.
Wow. You boys are smashing it. Let's just see. I haven't pressed the button, so I don't know what figure the other 2 are getting. So 13th is 9 num. Interesting one here for Jez and Craig. The ATST driver.
That is an interesting one. So we're looking at above or below 13.
Yeah.
Yeah. However, I think Steve has just made it obvious that the only spare one below 13 is number 16, I think, if I heard that right. which means that Klaatu Skiff and some of the other goons have got to be above him.
Don't remember there was more than 20 figures, Jez. This is only the top 20.
This is just the top 20, of course. Oh, blimey. What do you think, Craig? Because, I mean...
Don't know. How many slots are left below him?
1. So I think we've got number 16 left. But obviously, that doesn't really mean
six slots in total. 13th was 9 Num. You're looking for where ATST driver is.
You see, I think, again, from a relevance point of view, he's not as relevant as 9 Num because people will have a little bit of pleasure from 9 Num because of the mail-away factor, because I definitely remember getting that in the post. So therefore, I think, actually 9 Num's got a bit more relevance in my collection. ATST driver, not so much. But, as you say, playing the numbers, Craig, I'll go with you again, man.
Yeah, should we do that? Higher.
High's incorrect. He is 16th. He is 16th. So Mark and Steve have now got a bit of control. And they're going to have an easy one here because Steve knows his numbers. You've got Bib Fortuna.
Oh, higher.
He is. He's up in 7th, which I was surprised he was a bit higher than what I was expecting. Yeah. So a bit of pressure on the other two then because there's only 4 spaces left and there's 2 above and 2 below.
All right, yeah.
Bib Fortuna in 7th. You got Low Grey.
I think you'd be lower. Low Grey doesn't really do it for me. There's a lot of Ewoks. And Yuanawanga, I think Bib's got to be up there a little bit more important.
I would agree with that. Good
stuff. You are right. He's in 12th. But I think that might just give the other two a bit of an easier one. You've got Biker Scouts.
Oh, easy peasy.
Higher.
Guy on it, Steve.
Yep. Even without knowing that there are only higher options, I think it really higher anyway.
You are right. So, boys, the last one. There's only 2 figures left.
What number did he come in, mate?
Number 5.
Oh, right.
So, and they're close together numbers. If you haven't been following, you should have been listening. So Steve's not going to help you. You've got one that's higher and one that's lower.
Yeah.
Than Biker Scout. You've got Luke Jedi.
Oh, mentioned earlier on, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I don't think there's going to be one which is above him.
Logic.
I would say Luke Jedi is above.
Yeah.
But he is. He's in 4th, and that is the end because the other boys know that the Game Guard is going to be 9th. Steve and Mark, you win. Now you get to choose though. You get to choose between Jez and Craig who is going to do this month's little task.
Which is
which one do you think would be fun? Well, they've got to make an 8-page brochure catalogue packing to go in with anything we ever produce, with anything to do with Generation Skywalker in 8 pages.
Craig hasn't got enough to do, has he?
Are you sure? Just think about your answer.
Yeah.
Definitely Craig, and definitely in a die-cut formation of one of your crates. That's the way to make that work.
Yes.
Yeah.
No offence taken.
Cross little cruciform thing.
I'm going to be honest. I'd love to have seen Jez do it because you would have guaranteed have had to cut them out of magazines, stick them in, photocopy.
Yeah, I'd have ended up with crayons around my chin and everything.
Sellotape the middle of the booklet so it folded, kind of.
That's right.
Rather than staples. Not allowed to use the stapler, I just. Well, there you go, Craig. A little challenge for you.
Thanks.
Well, before we go then, people, please check out our YouTube channel where all our shows are now enhanced. Just go over there and search for Generation Skywalker. Go onto any social media, so Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. Search Generation Skywalker. You will find our links. And, of course, go to www.generationskywalker.com where you will find links to everything, including some blogs, which at the moment only Craig has contributed to.
Mark was going to do. What happened to that?
What was that?
About your art.
Oh, yeah. I've almost done that, yeah.
Well, there you go. So you've got that to look forward to. It might even be out before this podcast. You never know.
Thanks for reminding me about that, Craig.
That's all right.
But that is coming. We're available on all of the podcast outlets. And please, if you do have 30 seconds, please go and leave us a review, either on Podbean, on Spotify, or on Apple Podcasts. It really does help us. But it is, for those old fossils this month, it is goodbye from Steve. Nice to have you on, Steve.
It's been a real pleasure. Thanks for inviting me along.
Yes, been very nice to have you on, Steve. Nice to catch up, mate. Good night from Mark.
See you at the party, Richter.
Excellent. See you later, Craig.
Cheerio.
And it is good night from Jez.
See you later, fellas. See you next time. Cheers, Steve. Lovely to chat with you.
And it is good night from me. We are Generation Skywalker.